I'm not trying to call you out, buddy. The only time you've opened your mic is to ridicule Matthew. If you're gonna open your mic, please just add to the points that are being put out there. There's no need for all the extra, please.
So with the thing that you said with I think what Globis most of the time use, they always use that, man. Like if you show them the video of Mr. Astronaut who landed on the moon, what's his name? Oh man, I always forget his name. It's so unnecessary to remember. Yeah, Buzz Aldrin. When he says, when the little girl asks, why has nobody been to the moon for such a long time? He said, and he's like saying, I think I know because it didn't happen, and that's no, because it didn't happen, that's the way it is, or something like that.
Yeah, because we didn't go there, that's the way it is.
Yeah, because we didn't go there. Thank you, Gary. I should maybe remember things better. So, and if you show that certain Clovers, they would just say, actually, I think he didn't mean to say that they didn't go there. He just put that sentence in the wrong position,
Yeah.
or what, like that.
They make
unbelievable.
Unfalsifiable and appeal to bullshit. So anyway, I think we should just move on though, right? Because I mean, what we've gotten from Matthew is that motion and acceleration are different, and that Einstein wasn't talking about acceleration, even though both the axial rotation and revolution include acceleration. And then you're actually imposing incompetence on Einstein and his very special and general theory of relativity writings. So I'll let you say that because that is a victory for us. So whatever.
That is what I'm saying. I wouldn't call it incompetence to clearly distinguish between motion and acceleration. I think he was just using words that people clearly understood.
He's explaining how we can't prove that the Earth is moving, and that prior to him proposing relativity, it was hard to become reconciled with that. So you can try to spin it, pun intended, however you want.
No, and just I agree with this particular remark in response to what Matthew said earlier about the peak of the parabola. The peak of the parabola in acceleration is not an instance of no motion, because if it was an instance of no motion, then the object would not continue to move, decelerating in its motion. The peak of the parabola is the beginning of the deceleration, not the beginning of not moving.
The peak of the parabola the whole time is under constant acceleration. The acceleration does not change the whole time.
Well, yeah, my only critique, I don't know about that, Matthew. My only critique is that no, it begins to decelerate on its way up, and then at some point there's no more acceleration and no more movement, and then goes back down.
Right at the end of the path, decelerating, it's going up and then trying to fall back down. But whether it go vertically up or whether it go horizontally, when it decelerates, the beginning of the deceleration isn't an instance of not moving.
Okay, so in physics, the acceleration is constant the whole time. Like to give the example of the 4 seconds, if something is in motion for is flying up and then turns around and comes down for 4 seconds, the acceleration is the same the whole time.
But
we can move on.
You can't have acceleration without motion. Einstein said you can't prove the motion of the Earth. Oh my God.
Those two are false statements, but go ahead. We can agree.
I just quoted him. Everyone can see it. So here's Henry Poincaré. A great deal of research has been carried out concerning the influence of the Earth's movement. The results were always negative. Okay, so now we're going to move back on to Michelson. Here's Albert Michelson discussing his Michelson-Morley experiment. He said, this conclusion directly contradicts the explanation which presupposes that the Earth moves. Seems pretty straightforward there, doesn't it?
Yes, that seems straightforward.
Okay. We can't feel our motion through space, nor has any physical experiment ever proved that the Earth actually is in motion. Historian Lincoln Barnett wrote a very infamous book about Einstein, very revered historian. Right. Do you agree or disagree with this statement?
No, I agree.
So no physical experiment has ever proved that the Earth is actually in motion. Okay, great.
That's what we've just been talking about this whole half hour.
And then you said earlier, what's this guy's name again? Was it Edwin Hubble in the early 1900s? Who was it? Yeah, it was. That said that that the idea that the Earth is not moving couldn't be disproved, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's Edwin Hubble. Yeah.
so this goes back to the most important question of the day, Matthew. And why did the head church figures depart from the cosmology of the Bible?
They didn't.
They did. That's what the whole beef was about. That's it. As a matter of fact, Edwin Hubble is the indictment of that. There were people that didn't believe that the earth moved, and then there's those people. So the question is, what was their justification for it?
Oh, yeah, they use science and observation to correctly interpret the Bible.
Okay. Well, they didn't use science. It's a philosophical decision. We've already covered that. So I think we should just keep going. I have a lot. I just want to breeze them.
Yeah, go ahead. What's it?
Okay, here's a physicist, Julian B. Barber. This is a physicist right now, very, very prominent and infamous physicist. He says, thus, even now, 3.5 centuries after Galileo, it is still remarkably difficult to say categorically whether the Earth moves. Physicist Julian Barber. So you agree?
So is he? I don't know if he's talking about like a motion in terms of some reference frame, or I don't know what the context is.
The context is whether or not the Earth could be geocentric or not. The heliocentric model proposes that the Earth is tilted on a 66.6 degree axis, wobbling.
Nobody uses that number, 66.6.
I know you guys don't use that number because you don't like to point out that it's just coincidentally Satan's number. I don't care. That's the number I'm using.
Satan's number is 616.
No, actually, only one text out of the thousands even claimed that.
The earliest one. The earliest, most accurate.
Oh, yeah. So all the other ones are wrong.
Because they're based on the internet.
Red herring, Matthew. Red herring, Matthew.
No one cares. All of it's a red herring. Yeah, so we'll use it. So you can't red herring. 23.4 degree tilted wobbling axis where it rotates and revolves. So the heliocentrism, in the context of heliocentrism versus geocentrism, so heliocentrism entails both rotation and revolution. He is explaining that it is remarkably difficult to say categorically whether or not the Earth moves. This is a infamous physicist of today.
Yeah, I don't know why he would say that, because I think it's fairly simple to do that. I mean, maybe if you're trying to prove it with experiments of light, like we were talking about before. So I don't know why.
Why are you reading into what he's saying? No, he didn't say anything about that. He said it's remarkably difficult to say categorically whether or not the Earth moves. So if you're saying that he's incompetent in his field, okay, cool. Other than that, we don't need to hear your speculations about how he misspoke and what he should have said. This is a published work. It isn't like he got bombarded on the street and misspoke. This is something he published.
Okay, so I guess in that case, I don't really know who Julian Barber is, but I would say I disagree with him. It's remarkably easy.
Yeah, so how so? How's it remarkably easy?
Oh, because the stars are far away and we see them rotate.
Oh, so begging the question. So it's just because he's actually intelligent, he knows that begging the question isn't in any way admissible. So, okay, next question. Bernard Cohen, another very infamous physicist. There is no planetary observation by which on Earth can prove that the Earth is moving in an orbit around the sun.
It doesn't get any more straightforward than that. But I wonder what the spin and flex will be.
Yeah, let's hear it. I'll read it one more time.
Oh, I disagree with him.
There is no planetary observation by which we on Earth can prove that the Earth is moving in an orbit around the sun. Physicist I. Bernard Cohen.
Yeah, I don't know why he would say that, but it seems like there are clear observations, so I don't know why he would say that.
Perhaps he said that because perhaps he said that because they didn't observe this. Just a thought.
All we're gonna get is that it is a victory for them to say that all of the prominent physicists and astrophysicists of today are just wrong. That is a win, because their main talking point in the mainstream is that we're science deniers, that we are not in the know, we don't understand basic things. And so we're using the very mainstream argument of consensus that they use against us. We are flipping it back on them. It is only the anonymous, I guess Matthew's one of the rare people that aren't anonymous, the anonymous globe zealot anti-flat earthers on the internet who just run around claiming all this other stuff contrary to the actual paradigm that they believe and the people that brought it to them. But yet they will immediately turn around and say, oh, you think every scientist in the world is wrong. So let them bumble around the internet contradicting themselves, because I'm trying to formulate a sharpened argument for us to actually shift the paradigm away from heliocentrism over to the factual representation of the earth. I don't care about the anti-flat earthers, right? So if all he can do is throw all these infamous physicists and astrophysicists under the bus, it should be very eye-opening for anyone in the audience, and all the flat earthers should realize how valuable of an argument this is.
Yeah, all those physicists and astrophysicists, if we ask them if the Earth is flat or spherical and whether it's in motion around the sun or not, I'd be happy to go with whatever they say.
But you're not happy to go with whatever they say right now when they point blank say that you can't prove it and that it's just a philosophical decision of preference due to the Copernican principle.
The Earth is flat. Right. That's weird. That's a weird way to put it. I don't know why they said it that way, but I think they all believe the Earth is flat.
But they believe that the Earth is a ball that spins and revolves around the sun.
That's right.
To a philosophical preference that they don't think it's logical to think the Earth could be special because they're like across the board atheist. Okay.
I mean, it's already over. It's already over. He already said he doesn't know why they said it and that he just disagrees. I mean, that's it.
It was over when he said acceleration is not motion. It was over right then.
I want all the flat earthers to save these quotes because I think they're very useful.
I think you guys should stake this whole argument on the idea that acceleration is different. Is the same as motion.
Shut the fuck up. No, it's not.
No.
Sorry.
He didn't even say motion. He said that the Earth moves.
Yes, again, that's right. Water forms into a mountain.
Again, if the Earth is in a heliocentric model, it has to both rotate and revolve. The context of the quote is him writing about geocentrism, which is a stationary Earth that is central, opposed to heliocentrism. You can try to spin it as however you want to. You're effectively lying. Okay. Thus, failure of Michelson-Morley to observe different speeds of light at different times of the year suggested that the Earth must be at rest. It was therefore the preferred frame for measuring absolute motion in space. Yet we have known since Galileo that the Earth is not the center of the universe. Why should it be at rest in space? Physicist Adolf Baker, explaining that Michelson-Morley contradicted the philosophical bias that they had, that the Earth is actually revolving around the sun, because the evidence showed that it wasn't moving. Okay. I mean, these are so damning. It's just sad. Okay, another very infamous physicist. The easiest explanation, so if we apply Occam's razor, that which requires the least assumption and the least complexity, right? Because the globers love to say, no, the heliocentric model can't explain things, though. And the heliocentric model has answers for everything. That's actually exactly the opposite, which means if they were to apply the logic that they were initially claiming, they would become geocentrists, but that would require intellectual honesty, and they cannot do that or think for themselves. So anyway, the easiest explanation was that the Earth was fixed in the ether and that everything else in the universe moved with respect to the Earth and the ether. Such an idea was not considered seriously, since it would mean in effect that our Earth occupied the omnipotent position in the universe with all the other heavenly bodies paying homage by moving around it. Physicist James Coleman. So it was not considered seriously because it would mean the Earth was special. That's science, isn't it, Matthew? That's science.
It was based on their prior presumptions of how things work, what the solar system looked like. So yeah, they
got an excuse for everything.
Wait. But here's the thing. Every quote context that he's given so far was questioning whether we moved around the sun or whether it was as if it looked before we thought we were moving around the sun. That is the context.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on. The Michelson-Morley experiment confronted scientists with an embarrassing alternative. On the one hand, they could scrap the ether theory, which had explained so many things about electricity, magnetism, and light. Or if they insisted on retaining the ether they had to abandon, or if they insisted on retaining the ether, they had to abandon the still more venerable Copernican theory that the Earth is in motion. To many physicists, it seemed almost easier to believe that the Earth stood still than that waves, light waves and electromagnetic waves, could exist without a medium to sustain them. It was a serious dilemma and one that split scientific thought for a quarter century. Many new hypotheses were advanced and rejected. The experiment was tried again by Morley and by others with the same conclusion. The apparent velocity of the Earth through the ether was zero. This is where the crap hit the fan, basically.
And then Einstein fixed it with relativity.
Okay, here we go to another one. So which is real, the Ptolemaic or Copernican system? Although it is not uncommon for people to say that Copernicus proved Ptolemy wrong, that is not true. One can use either picture as a model of the universe, for our observations of the heavens can be explained by assuming either the Earth or the Sun to be at rest. Physicist Stephen Hawking.
Talk
The
about
Earth is
enemy
flat.
testimony.
Or Jupiter. You could use Jupiter as the at-rest spot.
Yeah, but the epistemology to that is the flaw, the epistemological flaw in that is that in the heliocentric paradigm, nothing is without motion.
I mean, this is Stephen Hawking, my man. This guy
Stephen
saved your
Hawking,
heliocentric model 20 times.
Mr. Black Hole himself.
Dude, the most infamous physicist in the modern era.
Gosh, I posted too. Hold on.
Again, this is why I told you the context of the conversation, Matthew, was wouldn't you find it intriguing that all of these infamous physicists say themselves that the heliocentric model is no more viable or accurate than the geocentric model, and that we determine that it's heliocentric based purely on philosophical preference, that the Earth is not important?
Yeah, that makes sense, and I agree with that.
Okay, you agree with it, but you also think the Earth is important. Got it. Okay, so if we were to adopt a frame of reference like Tycho's in which the Earth is at rest, then the distant galaxies was seen to be executing circular turns once a year. And in general relativity, this enormous motion would create forces akin to gravitation, which would act on the sun and planets and give them the motions of the Tychonic theory. Physicist Steven Weinberg, who's saying that even if you assumed relativity, it could still work, which of course relativity is wrong. Okay, so this is again explaining, look, oh, well, if the Earth's at rest, then that would just mean that the galaxies execute circular turns once a year, almost as if the sky is an intricate timepiece that was made to all work together on the same timeline. That's so illogical. We must believe that everything is random and chaotic, though. So
And
again,
it behaves in a law-like manner, immutably.
Exactly. The more logical option, that there is a natural order, is thrown out, and we go over to the absurdity of chaotic happenstance that cannot explain it. What a joke. Very infamous physicist. Okay, so here's another quote. This guy's name is Fred Hoyle. This is the astronomer that coined the term Big Bang. It's actually because he thought it was stupid, that's why he called it that, but very infamous astronomer, again, coined the term Big Bang. Let it be understood at the outset that it makes no difference from the point of view of describing planetary motion, whether we take the Earth or the Sun as a center of the solar system. Since the issue is one of relative motion only, there are infinitely many exactly equivalent descriptions referred to different centers. In principle, any point will do, the moon, Jupiter. So the passions loosed on the world by the publication of Copernicus's book, De Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium Libri VI, were logically irrelevant. Astronomer Fred Hoyle.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, that you could arbitrarily pick any point as the center and do all the calculations.
And that all observations work. Yeah. So
if that's the case, and geocentrism preceded heliocentrism, again, what was the justification?
The justification was probably because the sun was the biggest thing in the model, and so they said, "Oh, we should use that as the center and make the."
So sun worshippers, huh?
Yeah.
No, not worshiping, just picking the biggest thing as seeing that as the center place.
You have to
idolizing it, yeah. I mean, because there's no reason. There's no reasons. That form of idolatry is very apparent, specifically because the people who've come up with the idea already had an idea that we were the center because of their theology.
But wait, Matthew, you realize that if the Earth is geocentric, then the sun isn't the biggest thing. So that was a textbook begging the question.
No, I think the geocentrists even said that the sun was bigger than the Earth. Some of them did.
No, you're wrong.
No, you're wrong.
You don't think the Greeks thought that the sun was bigger than the Earth?
All geocentric models say that the Earth is small, that the sun is small, not the biggest thing.
No, geocentrism has to do with the Earth being the center. It doesn't say anything. It's agnostic about the sizes.
Matthew, come on, dude.
Matthew, never learn.
The sun is local in geocentrism. Anyway. So here's another one. We can take either the Earth or the sun, or any other point for that matter, as the center of the solar system. This is certainly so for the purely kinematical problems of describing the planetary motions. It is also possible to take any point as the center, even in dynamics, although recognition of this freedom of choice had to await the present century. I would hate to break it to Fred Hoyle, who would be turning in his grave. Actually, we do not have the freedom of this choice still to this day in 2022. Even the governments themselves have come out and actively censored, misrepresented, and strawmanned the geocentric position. And NASA has gone as far as to take all kinds of information off their website that actually supports geocentrism, retroactively eliminating the information so that people cannot have a fair decision or choice. Totally seems like a side I want to be on, huh, Matthew?
I would dispute that characterization. That's interesting, the way to put it, though.
They removed a ton of stuff off their website. You can prove it with the Wayback Machine.
So yeah,
so justify your dispute. Well, first of all, clarify what your dispute is, and then justify it.
So you can choose any point as a frame of reference, either the sun or the moon or Jupiter or the Earth or whatever. And then it just makes more sense to choose the sun if it's
no. I mean, what is the dispute with what was said? Don't just tell us how you feel. What was the dispute? In order to dispute something, you have to be speaking to something, which you were responding, right? And you said, well, I would dispute that. So what are you disputing, and justify it?
I dispute that NASA took off information from their website in order to keep people from believing the geocentric model.
Okay, well, they removed information that is more, it works better with geocentrism. Probably coincidence.
Yeah, not just NASA as well. It's also the European Space Agency. They used to have records of all of their balloon launches with the names of everything they sent up. We flat earthers started looking at all that stuff and publishing it and making videos about it, and they removed all that. Just a coincidence.
It was easy to see the irregularities in there. Well, not even, I don't even know if you would call it that. It was easy to, well, for lack of a better term right now, I can't think of, and all of their photos, so to speak, they removed them.
Yeah, it showed that they had a special position.
So it used to be that you could get like the original picture or original information, and so now you just get a JPEG. Now you just get a copy.
Yep. And
So
that
that's
was
like
actually,
thousands of pictures, Matthew.
anyone that doesn't know, ESA, European Space Agency, that was actually the confirmation of the original findings from the WMAP team, which showed that the Earth was the center. And people were trying to say, oh, they just messed up. And then the Planck data came back from the the European Space Agency, which just further verified in greater detail with less noise in the imaging, and showed the very same thing, only stronger. So they could no longer handle dismiss it, although they've effectively still done that because, like you said, they just removed it once we started picking it up. So.